Trump was given intel that Soleimani, who has been leading terrorist proxy cells across the Middle East for 20 years or so, was behind the U.S. Embassy attack in Iraq and was about to attack further U.S. personnel. And they had him in their scope, so they took him out. It's not that complicated. The real issue here is why the hell the U.S. military is still in Iraq, let alone why they even went there in the first place. Biden supported that war, but I doubt he'll have to answer for that during the election season. Now, the nonsense coming out following the assassination has been the typical fear-mongering tripe that our media is obsessed with. People are saying that there will be a draft and Trump wants a new war to win re-election. People are saying this is World War III, which also kind of comes up every year, so don't let that surprise you much. And people are saying Iran will soon nuke the U.S. So, the draft. Negative 5,000% chance of that happening, but I do love how all the feminists suddenly are acting like they're going to become housewives because equality. And the idea that Trump wants the war to win re-election it's almost as stupid as that since he's running on an anti-war campaign. It'd be nice if we could pull all troops out of the Middle East, but the media and the Congress all shit their fucking pants in anger whenever he mentions the idea. So it's them who want the endless wars to continue. And of course they pretend to oppose this attack because Trump didn't ask them first. And these fuckers even cited the law where the president has to notify Congress within 48 hours. That hasn't happened since World War II. Where were you for the past 80 fucking years? Ideally, when Trump gets reelected, he can give even less of a shit what these people think and just pull all the troops out freely. I mean, look at all these goddamn bases the U.S. has just in that region. This would be a good segue to the World War III nonsense, which, despite this map showing how quickly Iran would be destroyed, also assumes Iran has a military. They don't really. Their forces are really spread out across the whole Middle East, and their navy is a rubber ducky next to the U.S. Their air force may as well be paper airplanes. I mean, we know Iran can't really fight because they've been involved in tiny skirmishes with the West since the Iranian Revolution in 1979. But if you're wondering who started what, you technically have to go back to the 1953 CIA coup in Iran. And the Middle East already hated America, so that just made it all worse. However, it's also well known that Hezbollah is just one of many Iran-sponsored terrorist organizations. And despite media wanting to say that Soleimani couldn't be behind the U.S. Embassy bombing since Iraqi people did it, it shows how little they know about Iran's terror financing. Plus, they literally painted on the building that Soleimani is their leader. As for the nuking thing, Trump already dropped out of the treaty, but after Soleimani's death, Iran said they will no longer follow the limits set by the Treaty of the Nuclear Development, which was freaking people out for some reason. Like, does anyone seriously believe that they were following the treaty in the first place? The brilliant treaty that was, the U.S. gives Iran $60 billion, partly in cash and partly by removing sanctions, and Iran can continue to enrich uranium. But only 5,000 centrifuges, and after 15 years there are no limits. Nevertheless, Iran's nuclear capability is still extremely low, and is expected that they will build their first bomb within the next decade or so, all things equal. Whether or not they will have the capacity to even launch or drop it is another question entirely. Anyway, now that Trump did a thing, people are programmed to be angry. So everyone who was previously confused about if they're a man or a woman is now an expert on Middle Eastern politics and diplomacy, feigning outrage after the death of a literal terrorist leader. I mean, I got this article from an ex-extremist Muslim from Pakistan, and this article says about Soleimani, he personally oversaw an international multi-billion-dollar terrorist proxy network. And not just U.S. service members, but he was personally responsible for the deaths of thousands of people, including hundreds of Iraqi civilians just in the past 3 months. He slaughtered his way across the Middle East in pursuit of regional hegemony. Sounds like the Persian Empire is still alive after all. If he could not bulldoze his way through civilian infrastructure, he had a near-endless supply of impoverished, forcibly recruited Shia conscripts from Afghanistan and Pakistan that he could send over the trenches in World War I-esque human wave attacks until all resistance was broken, their lives apparently as cheap to him as the lives of the civilian protest movements he crushed. Trump is the real terrorist, according to the West, and this football player says he wants to start a war to kill brown people. Meanwhile, Iraqis and Syrians are cheering in the streets because these brown people were the ones being terrorized. One nice thing about Korea, I will say, is that celebrities who aren't Jung-sung are smart enough to keep their uninformed mouths shut. I shouldn't even have to mention that Iran was behind several attacks just in 2019 against regional oil tankers and an oil pipeline in April. There was a U.S. embassy attack in Baghdad in May. The U.S. drone was attacked in June, and Trump still called off a retaliatory attack because there would be too much collateral damage, and fired his advisor who was dying to go to war with Iran. Then, Soleimani attacked the U.S. embassy again. Finally, Trump retaliates. What a warmonger! Cue the brainless celebrities who ask for Iran's forgiveness. Who cares about all the civilians that Soleimani killed? Trump then threatened to hit cultural sites, and of course, Trump wouldn't actually do that, as we saw in Syria when he was getting pressured by everyone to retaliate against the gas attack that never fucking happened. He just bombed an empty building. But the media doesn't seem to understand that it's not their job to get involved in a threat, and made Trump admit that he wouldn't actually do it, which gave Iran the green light to bomb that U.S. base. Finally, though, there was no casualties except Iranians in a Ukrainian civilian airplane. were accidentally shot down. Trump follows with a couple sanctions and peaceably ends the conflict. Bada bing, bada boom. There was a super short World War III, eh? Naturally, only Iranian State TV and MSNBC reported U.S. deaths, plus media reporting Trump's speech as worsening the situation because they're fucking begging for war and to finally have something that they can actually blame on Trump. Ultimately, the only interesting question in this whether or not the U.S. is right to kill this man. Because Soleimani in Iran, despite endless chants of death to America and this hilarious Twitter shitposting, never truly threatened the U.S. as a country. And thus, constitutionally speaking, there is no justification for killing him. But we're pretty much 80 years past looking at the Constitution for legality. If the U.S. pulls out of the Middle East, they will continue killing each other as they have been for about the past 800 years. If the U.S. stays, the war machine keeps turning. Some baddies get killed along the way. But Obama's drone program taught us that up to 90% of deaths were collateral damage. So why not just have a decade of isolationism for a change? I mean, it's not really the U.S.'s job to fix other countries without an invitation. 90% of international bases should be dismantled, in my view. It's not the U.S.'s responsibility to police the world. Maybe you feel differently. Let me know.